Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Hey, really glad you're with us for the Wednesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. We've got a deliciously good martini today. We also have a bad martini that certainly has major crazy overtones to it. And then the crazy one also has a lot of bad in it. So we've got some overlap here is what I'm trying to say. But Jim, our good martini is just so much fun because it's a follow-up to yesterday's martini about the Texas Democrats who went on this absurd political theater of the selfies on the bus with the Miller Lite and then the private plane to Dulles and the selfies at Dulles. And then they just happened to come to Washington at the same time Joe Biden's heading up to Philadelphia to give his big pitch for the federal elections legislation. They're, of course, claiming that Texas is trying to pass really restrictive voting legislation. But here's the best part, Jim. You know, when you're trying to put a political stunt together, you might want to do a head count. And the Texas Democrats did not do that because the bill passed anyway. There were enough Democrats who stuck around in the state Senate to pass this thing by a vote of 18-4. That meant 22 of 31 members were present, which is enough for a quorum. So not only did they not even kick this to another special session, they didn't even really last 24 hours on this stunt, but I guess, they're going to make a lot of fundraising dollars off of this. So what do you make of the poorly executed political theater here?
Greg, if we wanted to be generous, we could say that the Democrats have a losing hand and they're trying to play it in a way that maximizes their fundraising gain and that maybe gets as much national attention as possible and can kind of whip up national support and make it look like those big bad Republicans are trying to prevent people from voting, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not really convinced that they're doing that much because, one, as you noted, like they haven't been able to stop the Texas State Senate from passing this bill. And the Democrats would say, yes, but we still have enough folks who have left the state so that there's not a quorum in the state house. And if the lawmakers do not return before the end of the special session, the bills languish. Except here's the problem. There's nothing stopping Greg Abbott from calling another special session right after that one. So it's kind of like Greg Abbott is like, I can do this all day. I can do this all day. I can do this all summer. As long as you guys keep staying away and our special sessions expire, I can just keep calling new ones. And if you guys will be in the state, well, I'll send the state troopers to go, the Texas Rangers to go collect you. And if you continue to stay away, first of all, you got to make a living. Remember, we talked earlier in the week about how these guys are not full-time state legislators. They're not getting paid I think he specifically said he's going to veto the money for the salaries of these lawmakers. But then the next thing is that at some point, you've got to pass other stuff. There's a big bail reform bill Republicans want to get passed. I'm sure a lot of Democrats don't like that. But the thing is, you can't leave the state and swear to never come back and just assume that that's going to lead to your reelection. Sooner or later, you've got to get back and pass some sort of laws. And when you do, there's a quorum. And the moment there's a quorum, Republicans are going to have the numbers to pass the bill. So this is all a delaying tactic. Democrats can delay the passage of this legislation. They really can't stop it. They just don't have the numbers. And I suppose you can say this is a way for them to get the most fundraising possible. But Greg, how many times have we said, oh, this is the year Democrats are going to win in Texas? We've been through this every 2 years for the last decade practically, and it never shakes out this way. And I really am not convinced that fleeing the state is going to be the magic key that unlocks the door to give Democrats statewide wins or even significant state legislative wins in the state of Texas.
They definitely look like the panderers that they are as they've tried to pull this off. And I think the fugitive meal tweet from one of them yesterday was a especially nice touch. And, one of them claiming that, this is not to the level of things that other people have heroically done for our democracy, but we are committed to this. I mean, they're over the top rhetoric and shoddy PR on this is something to behold. Let's talk about something far, far more soothing than that, and that is getting those sore muscles to feel much, much better, whether it's from your workout or just from sitting at your desk too long. Let's be honest. That's where Theragun comes in. Don't let the stress of daily life weigh on your body. So whether you're an elite athlete or someone like me who is definitely not an elite athlete, just trying to make it through the day tension-free, Theragun can really help.
Theragun is the handheld percussive therapy device that releases your deepest muscle tension using a scientifically calibrated combination of depth, speed, and power. And it's as quiet as an electric toothbrush. The Gen 4 Theragun doesn't just feel good, it gets to the source of the pain by releasing tension, using Theragun's signature percussive therapy, which goes 60% deeper than vibration alone. The OLED screen and design make you feel like you're holding something from the future. Just go to their site and check it out. And the Theragun app learns from your behaviors and suggests guided routines.
And as we've said many times on this podcast, I love the Theragun. Mrs. Columbus truly loves the Theragun. She uses it even more than I do, but we both really like it. And you can just fire it up and use it on the muscle groups that need work at that time. And once you connect with the app kind of figures out where you need it, and the app comes up with those routines. It's really, really cool. Theragun is trusted by 250 professional sports teams like Real Madrid and elite athletes like Paul George, DeAndre Hopkins, Maria Sharapova, hundreds of thousands of customers, and one of those includes me. So try Theragun for 30 days starting at just $199. Go to Theragun.com/martini right now and get your Gen 4 Theragun today. That's Theragun.com/martini. Theragun.com/martini. All right, Jim, let's move to our second martini now. And yesterday, Joe Biden was delivering his highly touted speech on election reform at the Constitution Center in Philadelphia, the very same Constitution that says setting election laws should be left up to the states. Article 1, Section 4, I believe. Nonetheless, Joe Biden making a push against what a lot of Republican state legislatures are doing, which is going to pre-pandemic voting rules, and in some cases actually making it easier to vote early, in some cases requiring identification for mail-in ballots. Democrats definitely not liking that, even though they're easing up on same-day voter ID. But Biden couldn't just go with the very vague generalities about why he doesn't like the state laws or why he thinks we need the federal legislation. He had to really, really build it up into something that it's so clearly not. It's this existential crisis in our country, Jim. Couple of clips. Here's the first one.
So hear me clearly. There's an unfolding assault taking place in America today, an attempt to suppress and subvert the right to vote and fair and free elections. An assault on democracy, an assault on liberty, an assault on who we are as Americans. For make no mistake, bullies and merchants of fear, peddlers of lies are threatening the very foundation of our country.
If you thought that was over the top, just you wait.
The assault on free and fair elections is just such a threat, literally. I've said it before. We're facing the most significant test of our democracy since the Civil War. That's not hyperbole. Since the Civil War.
All right, Jim. So this is clearly not the biggest threat to our democracy or our republic, more appropriately. Since the Civil War, there's been far more dangerous and chilling challenges to our Constitution since then. But as I mentioned in the intro here, nobody on the left really ever gets to point to anything specific as to why this is so dire. They obviously want the federal legislation to pass, which gives the federal government more control over what happens in the elections. But from Georgia to Texas and plenty of states in between, nobody can really put their finger on anything that puts our whole system on the brink of collapse here.
Only 3 weeks of early voting. That's the greatest threat to our democracy. We keep hearing that it's Jim Crow 2.0. The greatest threat to our democracy since the Civil War would include the original Jim Crow.
Right.
So Joe Biden is asserting that what he's calling Jim Crow 2.0, the current restrictions on early voting, stuff that no one's saying you can't have elections. No one's saying you can't vote. There's some voter ID requirements. We've heard from Stacey Abrams and Raphael Warnock that voter ID requirements are fine. That all of a sudden this is worse than Jim Crow, really. So what's going on here? Well, Democrats really thought they were going to get their big S1 voting, election reform. Let's have federal government effectively take over the administration of elections in every corner of the country. bill. Didn't shake out right. Did not, didn't pass. Can't get through. Filibuster's not going anywhere. And I think they're kind of shocked by this. By the way, there are people who are like Democrats who follow the kind of nuts and bolts of election machinery. I don't mean just, I guess literally, but also like mostly I mean figuratively. And I think, when talking about Joe Biden, literally, it's very important to emphasize when you mean literal and when you mean figurative. But there are Democrats who say this actually is not very well written legislation, that actually it would end up creating a whole bunch of headaches and problems. They don't necessarily oppose every one of the goals in it, but they also think some of this is addressing problems that aren't really problems. And then really they need to go back to the drawing board and kind of more carefully construct the legislative language of this. So there's like an entirely non-ideological objection to S1 and these Democratic efforts as they currently exist. But Democrats really thought they were going to get this passed, and it is July 14th. We're now about halfway into Biden's first year. They can see the writing on the wall. There's not a guarantee that they're going to lose the House or Senate in the midterm elections, but it certainly looks pretty likely. There's not, midterm elections usually go badly for the president's party. The clock is ticking. And what's more is they managed to move the All-Star game this week, but they really haven't been able to persuade the holdouts on the Democratic side and all that kind of stuff. So there was this meeting a couple of days ago with Al Sharpton and a group of other, you can see, I'll use the term civil rights activists, and I'll let you decide whether you think that's an accurate label. And but they were basically, pretty darn mad at the administration, saying you're not doing enough to help us pass this legislation. And Biden was there, Harris was there, and apparently the meeting, at no point did Biden say, "You're right, we're not doing enough." But it's like, we hear you and all that stuff. This speech clearly is Biden attempting to placate these groups. He definitely is trying to get them off his back and say, "Look, see, I'm bringing the big guns. I'm going out and giving the big speech. I'm pounding the podium. I'm doing what I can to get this legislation passed." Now, I don't really think this is going to change the dynamics on the ground. I don't think it's going to make any of the holdouts really change their minds. Again, it might be good for Democratic fundraising and things like that. But I think, as you observed, the lack of specifics about what the legislation would actually do is a good indicator of the problem here. But I think there's another indication. I think this is genuinely bad for the country. I think one of the reasons, if you genuinely believe the opposing party is ready to destroy democracy forever, it's kind of like I'm going to, channel Jonah Goldberg here. Whenever somebody starts saying this is the moral equivalent of war, well, we're allowed to do things in war that we're not allowed to do in peacetime. We make moral compromises in war that we would not make in peacetime. So every time somebody says, "Look, this is a really extraordinary situation. It's never been this bad. The danger's never been so great," people justify to themselves, "I can do things to the other side that I would not ordinarily find ethical or acceptable," or something like that. So I'm not saying this is guaranteed, but this is basically pouring gasoline on our partisan passions. And it's the other thing which my colleague Kyle Smith observed. This is really Biden kind of setting on fire his own credibility as a bipartisan deal maker and the guy who's going to lower the partisan rhetoric and the incendiary words and all. No, he's as bad as anybody. And I'm reminded of his 2012 comment, "Going to put you all back in chains," about that infamous, notorious Mitt Romney. Joe Biden can be as incendiary as the next guy. It's just, he doesn't get nearly called out for it as much because he's got a D after his name.
Exactly right. And we saw it with Clarence Thomas. We saw it with Judge Bork. We saw it with John Roberts and Sam Alito. So, I mean, this guy, when the cameras are on and the attention is high, is more than willing to sling mud and get down in the dirt. This whole nice guy image who's always above it all is complete garbage, and it always has been. But, Jim, I don't know if you've watched the coverage of this, but it's so absurd. What do you make of the argument, well, okay, we're not going to kill the filibuster since Manchin and Sinema won't do it, but what about a one-time carve-out because this voting legislation is just so crucial? We have to do it this time. But just this one time, and then we'll go back.
Exemptions from the filibuster, I suspect, are going to be a lot like either potato chips or Oreos. Pick your preferred sweet tooth or snacking. It's very tough to do it just once. Once you allow yourself to say, "I can have that," you're going to eat more than one Oreo or you're going to eat more than one potato chip. Both of these would amount to, because the next time somebody really wants to get a legislation passing and say, "Look, we've only these two issues, okay, three really big issues in which you're allowed to ignore the filibuster." So I hope Joe Manchin recognizes once you open this door, it's not going to get closed.
Exactly right. Hopefully he's just watching the bombastic incendiary rhetoric here and rethinking his support for this legislation if it does include some voter ID provisions, but we will see. But in the meantime, Joe Biden, get a nap. I mean, you get plenty of them already, but I mean, that was insane. Or maybe your speechwriter needs a nap. But either way, My Pillow's going to help, and so will the Giza Dream Sheets. The pillows are fantastic. So are the Giza Dream Sheets. Super soft, great material, made in the USA. And as I've said many, many times, we love these sheets. We keep them on the bed and get them back on the bed as soon as we can once we have to wash them. So definitely a favorite in the Columbus house.
For a limited time, you can get 2 sets of Giza Dream Sheets for one low price plus free shipping. Imagine sliding into the most comfortable sheets you will ever own, guaranteed. They're made from the world's best cotton and grown only in a region between the Sahara Desert, the Mediterranean Sea, and the Nile River. Its long staple cotton makes it ultra soft and breathable. These sheets are available in a variety of colors and sizes. They're machine washable, and they come with the 60-day money-back guarantee and a 1-year limited warranty.
Don't miss out on this deal. Visit mypillow.com and use the promo code Martini at checkout or call 800-874-0104 for 2 sets of the Giza Dream Sheets for one low price plus free shipping. Again, that's 2 sets of the Giza Dream Sheets for one low price plus free shipping with the promo code Martini. Don't forget that promo code Martini. Use it at mypillow.com or when you call 800-874-0104. Sleep better with mypillow.com or call 800-874-0104. All right, let's keep talking about Democratic efforts to pass really bad legislation without getting to 60 votes. So they want to use reconciliation, of course, one more time. And it looks like because the bipartisan infrastructure deal made them cut a lot of stuff that they wanted, that they're going to pile a bunch of crap into another bill and pass that without much or any Republican support. Let's go over to Jazz Shaw at Hot Air with some help from NBC News. NBC says Senate Democratic leaders announced an agreement Tuesday evening to advance a $3.5 trillion spending plan to finance a major expansion of the economic safety net. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said the $3.5 trillion will be in addition to the $579 billion in new spending under the bipartisan infrastructure agreement. He said the deal will include a robust expansion of Medicare that includes new benefits like dental, vision, and hearing, along with major funding for clean energy. Quote, if we pass this, this is the most profound change to help American families in generations. Mark Warner declaring, according to Jazz Shaw, this bill will be fully paid for, which is an interesting claim since both Schumer and Bernie Sanders are promising that nobody making less than $400,000 a year will pay any additional taxes, and neither will small businesses. So the entire $3.5 trillion will be footed by corporations and the wealthy, who will be paying their fair share, quote unquote. So, Jim, kind of a pie-in-the-sky fantasy here. Oh, by the way, they still don't even have a bill for review to see what's in here. But they're going to try and jam this through. What do you make of the latest, I would say, unwise tactics by Senate Democrats?
I'm going to take a moment and address the Republicans who have signed on. I include some of my favorite Republican senators, Mitt Romney, Rob Portman. I think Bill Cassidy was in there. But these are all Republicans who think of themselves as fiscal conservatives. They probably see themselves as social conservatives and, in fact, full spectrum conservatives. But particularly, they generally believe that the government cannot just spend as much as it likes and not have serious negative long-term consequences. So I would say to Romney and Portman and Cassidy and the rest, and just kind of say, all right, well, look, if you sign on to the quote-unquote bipartisan infrastructure bill, and Democrats turn around and pass the wish list bill, what do you get out of this? Yes, you could say I was not a stubborn partisan, and I was willing to work with the administration when they were willing to be reasonable. And look, we did this. Okay, fine. If you were doing that and you weren't getting the 3.5 trillion, we're on autopilot. We think billion. It's trillion. 3.5 trillion in other unrelated crap. This Christmas tree wish list. What's in it for you? You gave away the store. What did you get out of this? Because if you're able to, if part of it's like, look, you get this stuff, you get our cooperation on this stuff, but you don't pass that stuff. All right, then it's a good deal. I can see the value of it. But in this one, they get everything they want, and you help them. And you don't get anything you want, at least if you believe the government should not be running up, multi-trillion-dollar deficits year after year. So I don't quite see the logic of it. I don't really see the point of this. And then I think I'm sure you want, you'd like to get that infrastructure spending fast, but right now, no less a figure than Joy Reid of MSNBC is saying, well, if Democrats don't get anything they want, they should say, well, hell with this. We're not going to pass the bipartisan infrastructure bill. Call that bluff. I like that. Oh, okay. Wait. That's an option again? We can pass nothing? I really like that one. Let's go. Let's take that option. Door number 3. And by the way, I have a sneaking suspicion that if the Biden administration really saw that and it saw all of the negotiations falling apart and the idea that they could pass nothing on infrastructure by the end of the year, I think actually you'd see, this sudden, puckering, if you will, in the Biden administration. Oh, no, we'll sign on to the bipartisan only bill. That's fine. So I think, look, the Republicans in the Senate and House, they have more leverage than they realize. So there's really no good reason for them to say, okay, we'll let you pass the rest of the stuff for reconciliation. And that way you spend everything you want and we don't really get much of anything.
Well, Biden's the one who actually got this whole mess going, because remember, he had the bipartisan group over to celebrate the framework for the infrastructure deal. And then the very same day at another event, he said, oh, no, there's got to be a 2-track process here or neither gets done. We got to have reconciliation on the third bill, whatever they call it, the American Something Act, and then get the bipartisan deal done so we can use reconciliation on the other one. What Republican in their right mind would allow this? So, all Mitch has to do is keep him from getting to 60 on infrastructure, right?
Yeah, look, there's a playbook to do this sort of thing, and it's kind of fascinating how much the Democrats are having a hard time passing it. The gist is you cooperate as much as you can. You say, oh, I don't want to be a partisan wars in Washington. I want everybody to get along, kumbaya, and you get the other. You don't push any of the stuff that is going to be really tough to pass. You go through and say, okay, let's get, we agree on infrastructure. Let's do that. We agree on some national security stuff, and you rack up the bipartisan agreements for as long as you can. Sooner or later, the bipartisan good feelings are going to stop. It's just a fact of life. Sooner or later, your administration will want to do things that the other party is not going to want to do. And then, after you've gotten all the bipartisan accomplishments, then you go back and you pass all the stuff you want. And by that point, you can try to do it through reconciliation, or you can try to figure out some way to do it in a way that you don't need any cooperation from the other side. Democrats don't have the patience for this. That's the fascinating thing, is that you could always kick the can down the road on the big spending bill. You help me now, and later on I'll screw you over, but not going to do it until then. And it's fascinating that they haven't been able to do this. They keep trying to do this connection, and it's just, like the idea of, there are Democrat progressives who would say, we've been given this kind of bait and switch before, and how do we know you're like, the Biden administration can decide whether or not they take that up. So we'll see how things go down, but it's just kind of fascinating to see how much there's a certain amount of amateurism at work in the progressive movement and the Biden administration's ability to manage these competing interests.
Yeah, with all the environmental stuff in this one that they want to do for $3.5 trillion, you gotta think Manchin's going to be a tough sell on that. I don't know if he'll nibble at it to give himself a little fig leaf of cover, but if he's really serious about saving West Virginia's energy industry, he's really got to oppose a lot of this, you would think. Jim, that's our Wednesday. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Don't forget to tell your friends about us and subscribe, if you don't already, to the 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Very grateful for your kind reviews and your 5-star ratings. Get us on those home devices. All you have to say to your home device is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us on Twitter. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a great Wednesday, and please join us again on Thursday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.
Open borders are inhumane. Joe Biden's immigration policies are already causing huge problems, from stopping border wall construction, releasing criminals into our communities, exposing our children to them, to the desperate people being exploited by the cartels on their way into the United States. I'm Sarah Carter. On The Sarah Carter Show, we are following this issue very closely, and I'll share my expertise and my terrific sources to explain how this impacts our nation and our families. Subscribe to The Sarah Carter Show at Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.